The Little White Moon Dragon by J.V. Davenport, also known as Kurokiku, aka JennyChama. Dedicated to my children and my grandchildren and my husband, and especially my youngest daughter. Dedicated also to all the little moon dragons who are ready to spread their wings, even if it's just a little too early. We know you'll be all right. Once there was a moon dragon who lived in the mountains with his mother and father and 6 sisters and brothers. They were huge, with purple and black wings and golden, glimmering scales. But color had forgotten him, and he was all white. And his wings were little, and his scales were so clear and translucent you could only see the reflection of the moon, as if the moonbeams were passing through a prism glass. But he didn't mind. They all called him Little White Moon Dragon because of this. But he didn't mind. He just floated around the rocks of the tall mountain under the beautiful moon at night and watched the stars above and the little people in the town below. He watched them every night after moon school was done. At moon school, his mother taught him the phases of the moon and how to recognize the stars so he would never get lost. His father taught him to harness the winds that blew from the moon so that he could float up high in the nighttime sky. And his sisters and brothers taught him to fly down to the water, to the waves of the sea that were pushed by the moon's magnet, and to catch fish to eat. And when the moon was done, Little White Moon Dragon would float as close to the bottom of the highest-most crags of the mountain to where he could see better what was going on down below. He wanted to go down closer, like his sisters and brothers did on occasion, when it was rumored that moonstones were hidden in the town below. But his mother and his father told him no, that it would be too easy for townspeople to see him, and that he was too young to tell when they were good or bad. This he did mind. When Little Moon Dragon felt upset to be left behind while his siblings flew down the mountain, Little White Moon Dragon would puff up into a big white ball like a pufferfish and just float in place until he calmed down, pushed gently by this wind and that, bathed in the light of the moon, totally ignoring anyone who flew by, and they all left him alone when he was like that. But one day, he made the decision that he would also go down to the town to look for moonstones. He just would not tell anyone. Days passed, weeks passed, months passed, seasons passed. The Little White Moon Dragon got older, learned more, and found himself even more determined to go down that mountain. He even asked his mother and father again, wanting their blessing, which they did not give him. But he didn't mind. He had plans of his own. One evening, as the darkness fell and the moon shone bright in the sky, Little White Moon Dragon heard a sound. Someone below was crying. It was a loud and desolate crying, so sad and angry too, and it wouldn't stop. Little White Moon Dragon flew to the lowest rock at the top of the mountain that he had ever perched from, and he peered down to see who might be crying like that. All he could see were the tops of the village houses and people walking in the night towards their homes without a care. But he could still hear the crying. Little White Moon Dragon stretched his neck and looked up to see if any of the other moon dragons had heard, but they all seemed busy doing their own thing, and no one paid the crying any mind if they even heard it at all. Little White Moon Dragon sat up taller on the rock, took a deep breath, and spread his wings. He would find the one who was crying. He looked at the edges of the town in the darkness lit by the moon, using his best moon powers to see in the dark, and there, on a cobblestone wall, sat a young girl crying and not caring who heard. It actually seemed no one else did. Without worrying whether she would be afraid of him, Little White Moon Dragon floated down the mountain in the darkness, trying to hide from the moonlight. But of course, being all white and almost translucent, that was impossible. But he was so fast, and she was so distracted by her own crying that he was beside her before they both knew what had happened. There, in shock, they stared into each other's eyes and did not make a sound. Little White Moon Dragon felt sad for her and did not know why she was crying, but he stood on his curled tail and took a deep breath in the moonlight and puffed up until he glowed brightly and peacefully for her to see, hoping she would copy him and feel better too. The girl, still in shock, gasped, then looked, and then she herself puffed up and sat there tall until she also felt herself calming down. When Little White Moon Dragon saw she was calmer and was no longer crying, he spread his little wings and tried to fly back up to the mountain top, but his wings were not yet strong enough to fly without help, and his tail got caught in some nearby trees. To make things worse, townspeople had noticed him and were running to the edge where they were. And his mother and father had also seen and were perched to fly down the mountain to save him, and no doubt were angry too. But the young girl he had helped stopped them all by standing up on the tallest part of the fence, freeing her new friend's tail from the tree branches, and by giving him a big hug around his neck for all to see, climbing up upon his back as he looked all around. That stopped them all. The townspeople, his mother and father, his sisters and brothers could do nothing but watch as the young girl and the Little White Moon Dragon puffed up and floated away towards the moon, friends forever. And they didn't mind. The end. Boop, 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 boop.